I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Thomas Andrew Olson, our business plan manager, who is a founding partner of the Exodus firm with over 3 decades of experience in connecting startups with investment groups. So, Tom?
Thank you. There's your work, and then there's your life's work. The kind of work that has your fingerprints all over it, the kind of work that embeds itself into your DNA, the kind of work you never compromise on, the kind of work you sacrifice weekends for. We do that kind of work here. People don't come to this conference to play it safe. We come here to swim in the deep water because we want our work to add up to something big, something that couldn't happen anywhere else. Welcome to the Space Frontier Foundation, welcome to this year's NewSpace Conference, and welcome to the 2012 Business Plan Competition. Big change from last year, thanks to our friends at NASA Ames, who gave us a very generous grant. Our first prize this year has been bumped up to $100,000. And you can start a company with that. And second prize is $10,000. We have 10 finalists this year, and it was an amazing process getting them here. Here's just a comparison. Last year, we had very short notice to get this thing done. We only had 25 executive summary submissions, and we had 5 finalists. This year, we got the word out in multiple avenues, 55 submissions that we had to narrow down to 10 finalists. This was not easy. And the reason it was not easy is that we are still, in the first place, a rather small community, an intimate community, especially this conference. Everybody kind of knows everybody or gets to know them over a period of time. So, of course, the challenge is to make a really fair and impartial analysis of everyone's submission to make sure everybody gets a fair shake on a level playing field. We got lucky this year in that we recruited a great group of people to assist with the screening process, people who are kind of at the edges of this conference, but they can do a fair and impartial analysis. And so some of the in-house screeners at the foundation, if we felt uncomfortable, we would recuse ourselves, we'd put that in a pile and give it to these guys, and they could do that analysis for us. And then we had a big shakedown session at the end, which took hours and days and lots of phone time. That group is called NewSpace Global. I don't know if they're represented here today. I know Frank Mycroft has been here, and Richard David. Either of you here? Well, big thank you to those guys. They did a lot of great work. Now, how did we screen the applicants? We had a new partner this year in the form of an outfit called Decision Desk, and they have a lot of great online collaborative tools for screening applicants and for taking it to the next step. And we set up pages for everybody, and all the screeners got to be able to just go online, share their information, and then rank the applicants on a number of very important parameters. One, did the executive summary give all the required information? What was the depth of the management team and their backgrounds, their industry experience? The scale of that experience was very speculative to very proven. Their competitive positioning, was that defined well? Where do they stand against their competition? What's their unfair advantage, as we like to call it? If they don't claim they have a lot of competition, well, then how is their service sought after? Who's going for it and why? The technology, if technology is involved, it's not a service, it's a technology. Well, does it work as they describe? And how does it stack up to other competitive solutions, should there be any? And of course, how do they mitigate risk? What do their financials look like, the solidity of their pro formas and their operating history? And of course, overall, just kind of the gut feel you might have about the business, what you thought a Silicon Valley guy might think of this business, or an institutional investor, or even Main Street. And of course, the most important thing, its applicability to space. Is this a frontier-enabling technology or service that will help add another piece to that huge puzzle that we're putting together to make humanity a permanent spacefaring civilization? And those were the decisions that we had to go through. And here are our finalists, and they will be coming up shortly. We'll have the rules here in a second, but before I do that, I want to introduce our judges. We've got an amazing crew this year. We're very, very fortunate to have them. First of all, meet Eva Jane Lark. She's a vice president and wealth advisor with BMO Nesbitt Burns, one of Canada's largest full-service investment firms. For over 20 years, she's provided expert advice on a wide variety of investment and wealth management issues. In 2003, she revived her childhood passion for seeing humanity live and thrive beyond Earth. Researching the state of the space industry, she began to consider how to contribute to such a future by taking a more active role. She's presented papers at space conferences, starting with the investment financing of exploration. She's been an invited speaker, panelist, and judge. She's been a previous judge of this competition in 2009. And she discusses topics including financing for new space companies and markets, business accelerators, business case issues facing space resources, both space-based solar power as a future energy source, and in situ resource utilization in space mining, and for her insights as a keen observer of the emerging new space industries. Please welcome Eva Jane Lark. To her left is a judge who has actually served us last year as well, and he's back for a return bout, which I think is amazing. Hoyt Davidson is the founder and managing partner of Near Earth LLC. Previously, he was the managing director at Telecom Group at the Credit Suisse First Boston. His investment banking career began in 1987 as an associate and one of only approximately 100 bankers at Donaldson, Lufkin, and Ginrette. He was part of the phenomenal growth and success of DLJ to over 1,000 bankers by the time of his acquisition by CSFB in 2000. At DLJ, Mr. Davidson was a co-founder of the firm's Space Finance Group, Wall Street's first dedicated industry coverage group for the satellite industry. Mr. Davidson was one of two managing directors at the Space Finance Group. This group raised over $25 billion for satellite-related entities and held a #1 market share for several years. Prior to investment banking, Hoyt Davidson was a senior research engineer in the Space Systems Division of Lockheed Missiles and Space Company before leaving to get his MBA at MIT Sloan School. Please welcome Hoyt Davidson. To his left is Rex Ridenour. Rex is founder and CEO of, I believe that's pronounced IZUP LLC, a new space consultancy operating at the intersection of space technology, commercial space development, and investor communities. He's also an active board member at Ecliptic Enterprises Corporation, which is the home of the Rocket Cam that many of us know about, a firm he founded in 2001 and led as CEO and president through the spring of this year. Rex is a space mission engineer by education and experience, and entrepreneur by nature. Before Ecliptic, he was chief mission architect at Space Dev and Blastoff Corporation, focused on defining commercial lunar, Mars, and near-Earth asteroid missions. In 1998, at Microcosm, he played a catalytic role in the successful salvage of the commercial communications satellite AsiaSat-3 via a novel lunar swing-by trajectory, and still the only commercial spacecraft to have ever traveled to the vicinity of the moon. For the first 20 years of his career at Hughes, Lockheed, Utah State University, and JPL, Rex held technical and product leadership positions on 20 pathfinding space missions and projects as a spacecraft systems engineer, test conductor, mission engineer, mission planner, mission architect, project engineer, and study leader. Rex earned his MS in aeronautics from Caltech and BS in aerospace engineering, cum laude, from Iowa State. Please welcome Rex Ridenour. To his left, Thomas Atchison is the founder and chairman of the Maverick Civilian Space Foundation, a 501c3 California nonprofit he started in 2007, focused on enabling the personalization of access to space by the common man through STEM education, research, and competitive competitions. With over 25 years' experience as an entrepreneur and technologist in Silicon Valley, he has pioneered new technology and ventures in the semiconductor, mobile computing, enterprise software, medical device, healthcare information tech, security, aerospace, and defense industries. He successfully started 4 tech ventures, raising over $30 million in angel, corporate, and VC commitments. While VP of Engineering and GM at Navitel Communications, he was responsible for architecting the development of the first Windows-based web screen phone and smartphone platforms, which was acquired by Microsoft in 1999 and became the core of today's Windows mobile technology. He received an undergraduate degree in chemical engineering, a second degree in radiochemistry and nuclear physics, and completed graduate studies in engineering management. His current interests include space vehicle development, commercialization and civilian space exploration, STEM education, synthetic and systems biology, and next-generation manufacturing tech. Please welcome Thomas Atchison. And it just occurred to me, I'm looking down at that table and it seems there's someone missing. And so we're going to have to go hunt him down, I guess, very, very quickly. But for the record, our 5th judge, who shall be here momentarily, I'm sure, is Jay Buckner Hightower, the co-founder, executive vice president of Excalibur Almaz. He has more than 25 years executive management experience in multiple industries and a 30-year background of investment, entrepreneurism, and capital formation. His top-level teaming with Art Dula began in the 1980s, including as vice president and chief financial officer of Space Commerce Corporation, which formed the first historic Soviet-American joint venture in aerospace. Mr. Hightower's partnering with Dula led to various NASA-related endeavors, including leadership to Excalibur Almaz Incorporated, the U.S.-based arm's-length contractor to EA. His advisory services to U.S. startup firms includes Ad Astra Rocket Company, contracted to NASA for future deep space projects. He has a strong professional relationships and proven positive history of business negotiations with global aerospace entities, including Lockheed Martin, UK Space Agency, NPO Maschinestrojenie, Sea Launch, United Space Alliance and Spaceflight Operations, Japanese Space Agency, and EASASTRIM. And we will welcome Buckner Hightower when he arrives. What can we do? Okay, well, we'll sort it out. Okay, here's what's going on now. Here's the rules of the game. We've gone through a day-and-a-half extreme training program we call a boot camp for our finalists, and they've been just grilled and drilled over and over on making the best possible presentation, and we've gone out of our way to make sure they have the best possible platform and even playing field to begin this contest. So the rules, there's 12 total minutes per finalist team. We don't have a lot of time. So the finalists each get 6 minutes to present their case, and then the judges will get 6 minutes to ask them questions. And we will start now. And the first team up will be, we're going in alphabetical order, and the first team up will be digital solid-state propulsion. All right. Just double-click that. Yeah. Where's Buckner? Okay. He's going to miss the first 2, or at least halfway. Okay. Okay. Well, I just heard that Mr. Hightower is a wee bit indisposed this morning for some reason, so he'll be along shortly. He may miss the first presentation, but he'll definitely be with us. You're on. Oops.
So we're on? Hello, I'm Wayne Saka, CEO and founder of Digital Solid State Propulsion, located in beautiful Reno, Tahoe. What we've done over the past 6 years is completely change the way solid propellants are used and made. We've created what we call electric solid propellants, which are a completely new type of energetic material, new type of solid propellant that will be game-changing across a number of industries, including aerospace, industries that don't even know they need it, like tamper-proof electronics. The material is completely insensitive to accidental ignition, can be switched on and off and throttled electrically. And yes, we can scale it up a lot larger too. We've gotten about $3 million, $3.5 million worth of SBIR contracts in over the past 6 years. We've got about a $2.5 million backlog in contracts right now. We have about $2 million projected for our revenues this year, $3 million next year. My partner Mike McPherson and I are industry type people. We know this industry. I come out of the management side. Mike comes more out of the formulation side. We've got a young staff. Average age is about 30. Very well trained, Georgia Tech, Purdue, a lot of those guys. We have a very sophisticated client list. Some of the smartest companies in the world are buying our technology. We also have a very sophisticated investor, InQtel, that gave us our seed investment. It wasn't really a seed, but it was an investment last year. We have 9 patents protecting our technology. What we're doing right now is transitioning our technology out of the military applications into commercial space products. The military wants us to do this because the more we sell, the less they have to pay for them too. We have an upcoming flight of a 50-kilo small satellite where we'll be demonstrating our agile propulsion system. And then shortly after that, we have a deorbit module we'll be flying on a CubeSat. Some of the other fun things we get to do is use our safe propellant technology to do military training that we're starting next year, teamed with another company. We'll be able to take that into the entertainment industry. And some of the work we're doing on, I love this, our plasma cannon will take downhole in the oil industry and into the mining industry to break up rocks. But what we really do for NewSpace right now is now your little satellites can actually do something. They can move around in space. The safety aspect of our propellants allow you to fly these as secondary payloads with big, expensive satellites. So now you just don't have a tumbling object in space. You can move it around. You can disperse them into different orbits. You can then use close proximity operations to do inspector missions, robotic repairs, that type of thing, and then you can drop them back out of orbit. The types of products we have are largely scalable in the small space side. A little micro thruster like this, 1/10 of a gram of propellant, can be fired once or it can be fired 30 times depending on what you want to do with it. A deorbit module like this will be flying in about 2 years' time. We build them up like Lego blocks so we can make large panels to big satellites too. The critical thing we're developing right now is a 2U agile propulsion module where you'll be able to get 300 meters a second of delta V from your secondary launch and then have drag makeup and ACS on that unit. The small satellite market, though, is relatively small for us. You guys all want cheap products. That's what we're doing. We're going to enable you guys to make money with our propulsion systems. We make money by making very large panels for very large satellites, but the small satellite market will allow us to get into that. This is only the tip of the iceberg for us. Where we look at a $70 million market, that's a market we already have the products to enter into. Where we really make the money now is going into the oil and gas and mining markets. That's our biggest market. We've already been getting contracts in that area to develop our safe technology for that market. The missile interceptors, the missiles, the gun systems, those are all on development paths. We're teamed with the primes. One of our unfair advantages is when Aerojet and ATK compete against each other, we're on both sides. They need our technology. The entertainment industry is really nice. They're waiting for this technology. We can do special effects that are not possible now in this industry. So again, we desperately want to get into this commercial space market to validate this technology, enable you guys to go to make a lot of money flying your small satellites into different orbits, and we'll get invited to a lot of Christmas parties that way, I hope. Anyways, yeah, our technology is so cool, we can even play music through it. But what you're seeing is like kilovolt or kilohertz switching technology. So the impulses we're able to provide, typically small thruster, 10 micronewtons here, I'm sorry, 10 millinewtons. Those would have been micronewton pulses. Whatever you want to do with it, you can do with it. We're looking for $6 million to enter these commercial markets and expand the development of our commercial products there. Thank you.
We got a mic. Okay. There'll be time now for questions from the judges. Keep in mind, I forgot to mention this earlier, I'm sorry, there are no questions from the audience. This is not an audience participation event, just these nice people and the judges. Thank you.
Oh, one went off. That was an accident, you guys. We'll fire more of those at the tweet up tonight.
Yeah, hi. Good presentation, Wayne. We all had a chance to review your business plan write-ups, the complete 30-page plus or minus before, so we have a bunch of questions. I had a couple of quick technical questions, just to understand it more. First of all, is the power you need to drive these going to be an issue for like a CubeSat application? And once they fire, have you assessed what the effluents are from the exhaust, and does that bother anybody?
The exhaust products are completely non-toxic, CO2, water, and nitrogen. That's why the entertainment industry loves this. We've also shown that, well, for certain DoD applications that you need non-toxic exhausts. As far as, what was the other part you asked?
How much power?
How much power, yeah. We developed this technology for the hypersonic railgun exo-atmosphere maneuvering system, which is extremely power challenged. I can't go into that, but it makes a CubeSat look like it's got a lot of power on board.
You mentioned it's scalable, but it looks like it's scalable by having dozens or hundreds of the small modules.
Well, it depends what you want to do
or,
with it. You saw a large rocket motor firing 200 pounds of thrust, and then you made small ones. It's the most versatile solid propellant that's ever been developed.
Could you talk a little bit more then about how you might use this propulsion technology for larger satellites and some of the trade-offs a satellite operator or satellite manufacturer would make in choosing your technology over, so ion propulsion or traditional?
It's not necessarily going to be a choice one over the other. It's going to be an additional option they have to do different things with their satellites, or a redundancy level that, unfortunately, when there's excess payload on a launch, the satellite provider may choose to strap these on to give the big satellite a longer duration rather than fly small satellites with it. That type of option. Big panels for pointing if your momentum wheels fails, those types of things. But really for the big satellites, something I didn't have a chance to mention, we've actually, for the oil industry, we've created electric liquid propellants now, and we're going to spin those back into the aerospace industry for catalyst-free monopropellants. Again, they're green, they're easy to use. Getting rid of that catalyst bed for a monopropellant really changes your options for in-space propulsion. But that's one of the pipelines of products we have coming out with this platform technology.
For the money that you're raising, is it an investment in your company that's been in business for a long time, or are you effectively spinning out a subsidiary that is where the investment's
That's negotiable.
going to?
There's the oil side. There's some dispute on that right now. We have somebody on the oil side, and there's some interest in spinning that oil side out. But the investment I'm talking about this group for is primarily to do some of the commercialization of the aerospace products.
So in that case, can you just give a quick background about the profitability of DSSP as a whole, maybe?
Well, we've been putting all the money back in. We bootstrapped this thing, so I haven't been taking profit out of it. We buy equipment. We keep the employees happy with that money. But where we actually will make our money, since the government has paid for the development of these products, when we start selling them commercially, they will be very profitable because we don't have development costs to make up for. Right there, they're profitable. So unlike everybody else that needs to make up for that, we have the government paying for the most advanced development of these systems, and then when we start selling them, we just make money on it. That's how the SBIR program works. We own the intellectual property, we own the profits going forward. They're not taking that stake. So that's where we make money. And of course, going to commercial, we're not stuck with 7.5%, 8% profit in the government.
Could you maybe inform us a little bit more about, you're raising $6 million now. What do you think the total capital is going to be required to get to break even for the company? I know it's tough because you got the different market segments out there. Have you looked at that? Or
The next big hurdle is when the commodity demand goes up for the oil and mining, and we actually have to build the oxidizer plant. But our oil company customer kind of shrugged the amount of money that would cost off as peanuts. So we're not. If the commodity demand is there, the customers that want this will be there to back it.
So are you going to have to build your own sales team, or are you going to?
Well,
that's another big swallower of capital.
On that side of it, we'll be working directly with that customer as a strategic investor. Their only concern with selling to other oil companies will be that we're meeting their demand. They're funding the demonstration next year, so we'll feed right in there. Otherwise, for our sales force, what the basic model for our company is, we do the development, and then when it gets to high rate manufacturing or that commercial side, we've already had offers to team for sales forces in the traditional aerospace business. They want our products to sell. They have the customers already. We can give it to it and focus on what we do best.
Yeah, Wayne, I looked at your 2011 results in your business operations, and I noticed a couple of things that just seemed a little unusual to me. And one was that with the number of employees you had and the revenues and all that, the revenue per employee was like a very low number compared to what I'm used to in the small space business area. But at the same time, you spent a very high fraction of your revenues on IRAD, the internal research and development last year in 2011, but you were still profitable. Very high percentage, and you were still profitable. And I'm just curious how that does it mean you have a lot of technicians and they don't cost you much to do what you're doing, or
No, it means
how does that
I
all
fired
happen?
my financial officer 3 months ago, and
Oh.
those financials were the kind of what we pieced together. Yeah, he's gone. And what I can tell you right now, we're stable. We've got good cash flow through the new year. Anyways, we're going through that. But sometimes you trust people that you shouldn't be. And I noticed. I was noticing other things. My main thing was the cash flow that I was seeing wasn't working out. But he's gone, and I'm saving a lot of money now because my junior accountant's handling it, and she's doing just great.
Thank you very much.
Good job.
So, Matt. All right. Let's wait for this thing to fire up. Next up will be Exocoat. Where's the, what's that one? Okay. Okay, we push that. Yeah, I got that. Done. Go.
Test, test.
Well, you know, look, we're all space advocates here. Gary Fisher and I, we're like really old space advocates. We've turned gray together in the space advocacy business. Gary's going to address for you judges all your questions about the business plan end of this here in a minute. But I'm here to speak to you as fellow space advocates. I'm going to try to do that with no BS. As space advocates, we all know that there are some real total showstoppers just beyond LEO, just outside the protective cocoon of the Van Allen belts. We know this. Every one of us, if we were honest, could name a dozen. For instance, we don't have any idea whether we can generate enough artificial gravity to significantly impede loss of bone mass. We've never tried it, even with mice stuck in a centrifuge in micro-G. We've never thrown a CubeSat out of the hatch tethered to a counterweight, spun it around to see if we can simulate Earth normal in the center of a spacecraft. We've never simulated a radiation survivable crew capsule outside LEO to determine if we can keep a crew alive during a solar flare. And we've never kept a spacecraft clean, livable, and hygienic after sticking a bunch of naturally dirty humans inside of it. Exocoat is going to try and tackle some of these outstanding issues. And we're going to do it in a way that reaps profits in the 1G and benefits in 1G. How? Well, it sounds simple, but we are proposing a new coat of paint. That's it. And that it will be a significant part of the solution to issues that may impede or actually block human spaceflight outside of LEO. Now, I want to make a very heavy emphasis on the word new, because you see, paints and coatings traditionally have only protected the underlying surfaces on which they rest, and in some cases they've decorated it. But the coatings that we are talking about will dynamically alter the environment in which they are found. To grasp this, you need to first understand two things. One, how ubiquitous aerospace coatings are in a spacecraft. And two, how much surface area is really there in those coatings that interact with the environment. Every object made by the hand of man is coated as a separate step in its manufacturing process. That holds true for aircraft and spacecraft too. This is to say nothing of the coated surfaces on hidden equipment like conduit and wiring that remain out of sight but intimately connected to the spacecraft environment. Nor does it take into consideration the coatings on the outside of spacecraft, such as solar panels, seals, and viewports. On top of the ubiquity of the coating, you need to appreciate that the length and the width of a coated surface is an inadequate measure of how much area there is in a coating that is actually in contact with the environment. In fact, you must take into consideration the depth of the coating. You must as well look at the porosity in the coating in order to calculate the actual surface area. When you do this, what you find is that the actual surface area is immense. What we are doing is trying to turn this immense surface area from a liability into an asset. We are turning the coating from an inert state to a very large dynamic instrument. After almost 10 years and $10 million of investment monies, a lot of it mine, certain of these engineering systems are commercially available at Reactive Surfaces, the parent company. And Exocoat, the company I'm talking about to you today, is being given the job of bringing them into the aerospace market. They presently include coatings for military aircraft that rapidly detoxify surfaces from chemical and biological weapons. They include completely non-toxic proteins that are very efficient biocides, capable of keeping surfaces microbe-free. They include self-cleaning surfaces that eliminate natural greases, fats, and oils from surfaces that accumulate there. So where does one get these sorts of additives that you stick in these coatings? Well, the answer is nature. Nature has been at the business, and at the molecules that populate surfaces and natural surfaces have evolved over millennia. And they efficiently rid themselves of microbes. They degrease themselves. and they eliminate toxin from their surfaces. We have just built the world's first functional coatings manufacturing plant in Mississippi alongside the world's premier Polymer Institute. We have protected these technologies with an extensive worldwide intellectual property portfolio numbering in the several dozens of issued patents and in hundreds of presently prosecuting patent applications. We're adding them at a rate of about a dozen per year now, and that rate is increasing. This approach has already garnered us several awards and nominations. In 2008, we were unanimously selected for the American Coatings Award for these coatings, beating out industry leaders such as BASF and Roman Haas. Last year, we were nominated by the Sherwin-Williams Company, the only other company I know that's delivered paint from space onto Earth. We were nominated by the Sherwin-Williams Company to receive the PDMA's Product Innovation Award in company with former winners Apple, 3M, and Dow. So, as you all, judges, deliberate over the next few hours, we have created a small kit. This kit right here, you're going to get it. Continuing on one of those such bio-based functionality coatings, and we'll be able to do it yourself.
Thank you.
All right, thanks very much.
If our 6 minutes is up, thank you.
I understand. And my colleague, Gary Fisher, is going to come up here and help me answer the business questions.
Hello.
One of the things I remember before Mir was deorbited were news reports about how contaminated it was. So, and that there was mold everywhere, and there were major problems associated with it. So, do you know what those molds were, and have you tested your coatings against them?
Yes, the answer to that is yes. The molds, in many cases, were something called black mold, Stachybotrys. That's one of the ones that you don't want in your house.
No.
Okay. In addition to that, algae and a lot of bacillus spores. I was just recently at a conference in NASA where we were looking at those kinds of issues, and in fact, they are on ISS as well, under the towel racks in the bathing facilities, in the workout facilities, anywhere you have moisture in more than just ambient moisture. You see a lot of that, and that's an increasing problem. There are issues also with things that are typically not seen as biocidal, and these are viruses. Viruses are very difficult to kill. These coatings actually tackle some of the nastiest of the viruses. These are the ones that are encapsulated. They actually eliminate they prevent the virus from being able to infect. Mm-hmm. But did you hear the story on Amir about the candles? It really smelled bad, terribly bad.
So, is there any opportunity for you to fly some of your equipment to see what the difference is compared to what's up there now?
Yes, we've been offered that opportunity, and we are working with a company right now to look at that. This is a pay-as-you-go kind of a situation. And so we have to decide whether we're going to make that kind of an investment and fly these coatings, mainly panels.
First of all, very interesting technology and product.
Sorry I didn't finish it. Sorry I didn't get to the end of it. It is.
Okay. My question was more sort of how your market breaks down. It seems like you have lots of aerospace applications, terrestrial applications. Certainly the space application is of interest to the group here. But there's only so many capsules and space stations, and so is it, maybe an early market but very small compared to your future? Or
well,
how does space fit into
yes,
the whole business?
well, we're sort of looking at the aerospace market, and the purpose of Exocode is to market to the aerospace market in its entirety. And we pick that market because it is a great place to start because of the cachet associated with particularly space applications. The interiors of aircraft are like little microcosms. You have kitchens, you have bathrooms, you have furnishings. In some aircraft, you have laboratories and sleeping places. So if we can get our products into those environments, it makes it much easier to go to the other markets, the terrestrial markets, and say, we're degreasing kitchens on aircraft, and we're sanitizing spacecraft. it'd be easier to get in, we feel. Our degrease product, for example, would be great in commercial kitchens, but we could penetrate that market a lot, and it just doesn't have any relevance to anyone else. But aircraft are, you can point to all sorts of things going on in aircraft, and we can implement our products in carpets, paneling, textiles. So.
Following on that, that all made sense to me, and that's how it came across to me in the write-up, especially the aircraft market, because it's just booming. And you also mentioned at the very front end of your write-up that you're a well-financed R&D company already, which you just said. So my question is, why aren't you starting already? And why do you need this particular competition to help kickstart that for you?
That's a great question, and one of the answers is lesson learned. And the lesson learned was what I heard someone else talking about earlier. We originally went in strictly into the military coding and trying to get that military sales cycle dwindled down or diminished to the point that we could actually do it. We are just now getting to that point after 8 years of trying to do so. So the first answer to the question is we learned a hard lesson, okay, and that's the military sales cycle. The second answer, as part of the question, is that we are. Last year we sold over for $420,000 to the U.S. military of one of our additives. This is the detoxifying additive. And we have serious interest from coming right now. So yes, we are. But Gary and I are space advocates. I said that right at the first. And we want to be in this game. I have a hard sell with some of my investors about that. So that's why, frankly.
I'd like to know a little bit more specifically about kind of how this problem is currently being addressed today. We have a lot of people that have been up in the space station. Obviously, also, that has a quantified cost associated with it. And I'm interested in the cost delta, particularly for an organization like NASA that's having cutbacks, and they seem to be that first and maybe only customer for a little bit. I mean, I don't know if you've talked to SpaceX about the Dragon, but obviously having humans in any of these sorts of things, clearly there's the issue, but it has to be being mitigated today at some cost level, and I'm interested in the cost difference between your solution and what's being currently done today as a value proposition, and I'm also interested in who you think your first near-term market is really going to be, and particularly the customer. Right.
And are you talking about in the space markets?
Well, whatever your first near-term market is.
Well,
you put
the U.S. military is already one of our clients, so that we intend to leverage that.
So you're going to go after the whole military, or just the Navy and their ships, or
The
that's
the
got
US
some
the US
capital associated with
I'm
it. That's
sorry.
going to be an issue.
The U.S. Army is the first and foremost. Okay, surprisingly, the FBI
Right.
is into it. There are a lot of scenarios right now in which chemical weapons they loom large.
Right.
You all know about them. They're bragging about it.
But I guess maybe what I'm trying to get at, what do you think the total amount of capital is going to be that you're going to need to get to break even? Because it's not clear to me on exactly who the first customers are and what the early customer opportunities and costs are going to be.
Well, we're looking to develop this exocoat marketing organization, and that's what this funding requirement is, to do that. The potential demand here is so vast, and basically you would want to coat every piece of military equipment to protect it against biological and chemical warfare. Currently we have some interest from the Air Force to look at open cockpit vehicles like helicopters. I think if that takes off, it would open the door to lots of opportunity. But we have a paint coatings factory. It can produce a certain quantity of output. I think at some point we would need to license the technology to others in order to satisfy demand. And so we don't see ourselves as being a Sherwin-Williams kind of coatings company, vast factories generating millions of gallons of paint. It's more our coatings plan is to develop customized things for people to try out, and if volume increases sufficiently, we go find some other manufacturer. So we're looking for strategic partners all along here who would perhaps make most of the investment to satisfy the customer demand.
Yeah,
And
we've just entered two strategic relationships. One with Nikasi, out of Japan, and the other with advanced polymer coatings for anti-fouling coatings. So we are looking at the strategic partnering route as well. Does that help?
A little bit, thanks.
We're done, thank you. All right. Next up will be Nanoli Bioscience. And just I want to take a moment to say that our fifth judge, Buckner Hightower, has arrived and is taking part. Please welcome him. Done and done.
Hi, everyone. My name is Peter. I am a co-founder with Nanoli Bioscience. And what we're doing is we're working to enable cheap, convenient, and safe delivery of vaccines to anywhere in the world without refrigeration. So every year, 20 to 26 million children are not immunized, and over 2 million people perish from vaccine-preventable diseases. This is in large part because vaccines must be refrigerated continuously from the point of manufacture to the point of care. This is a costly cold chain distribution system. It's a large infrastructure. You have to maintain it consistently. We're able to provide biological sample stability as well as medicinal preservation for long-duration manned space flight and future space settlement. This medicine would include antibiotics, insulin, epinephrine, and a slew of other vaccines that are temperature-sensitive biologicals. Our team is a young team, but we're passionate. We have a science advisory board that includes world-renowned chemists, bioengineer, and immunology. As well as the business and impact side for social impact, we also include my friend, Professor Alexander Hayes, to work on some of the business applications in space. What we're doing is that we're preventing heat from denaturing vaccines. When a vaccine denatures, it unfolds. It's that folded conformational structure that promotes the immunogenic response that produces antibodies for us. We do it with a polymeric encapsulation technique. This is a polymer mesh with photodegradable linkers, so that when we want to release the vaccine for administration, we use wavelength-specific light, and that photorelease is on demand at the point of care. This provides a safe, effective, and low-cost means to get vaccines to anywhere in the world without refrigeration. The vaccine market is large and growing. At over $27 billion in 2009, with a large compound annual growth rate, it's expected to exceed $56 billion in 2016. Often the transportation costs to get vaccines to where they need to be can be up to 90%. For the cold chain part of this, which is the refrigeration part, whether it's in transit or in storage, that can be 14% in the developed world and up to 23% in the developing world. In very hard to reach areas, it can exceed 50%. An example would be diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis vaccine. At over $1 per dose for the cold chain, the vaccine itself only costs $1.50. We have a billable materials of around 42 cents that we believe we can get down to around 4 cents with a factor of 10 improvement in economies of scale. That should provide over $70 million, or nearly $70 million per year, and that's just for one vaccine at one dose for 130 million births every year. But when you say that diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, as well as other vaccines require multiple doses, that number grows with it. So the global vaccine cold chain can, at a lower conservative estimate, is around $2.9 billion. When we look at beyond vaccines for other temperature-sensitive products, it can exceed $7 billion, and that's just for the cold chain. We're seeking over $1 million in financing in addition to aggressively pursuing non-dilutive funding from foundation grants as well as government grants. We'll be a scientific-focused company in the beginning, but by year 5, we hope to have 10 million doses in the field. With such a compelling problem, we're facing a lot of competition. However, the standard competition and portable refrigeration either requires grid electricity, portable electricity like solar power, gas, or batteries, and is simply not very efficient. The freeze drying or lyophilization technique is an aggressive drying technique, and that increases the wastage rate, sometimes up to 50%. That wastage rate means that you have to have about 15 doses produced just for 10 effective doses. For our emerging competition, spray drying, carbohydrate crystallization, and synthetic spider silk are new technologies that are emerging. However, they all require drying of the vaccine. Some of them have demonstrated thermal stabilization, but they still yet face other problems, whether it's scalability, chemistry, or cost. We're using a polyethylene glycol base that's well respected and known in the FDA and biopharmaceutical world. It has a body of knowledge extending all the way back to 1955. We're co-opting existing technology that's patent pending, and we're introducing minimal change in the existing supply chain. Our technology can provide reliable medicinal storage, no refrigeration breakdown, no spare parts. This would be available for future space settlement, and it's technology that's space age for future space research as well. This unique technology is not only applicable in space, of course. It enables immunization access anywhere in the world and can also help facilitate new drug development. From a business standpoint, to get large scale, we're going to have to pursue a method that makes us attractive for acquisition. Merck, GlaxoSmithKline, Novartis have all been very active in the past few years in the merger and acquisition market. In addition to them, there's also Sanofi, Aventis, and Pfizer. Thank you very much for your attention. Ready to take questions.
First question I'd like to ask about is, so I think you guys got a tremendous product and some potential here clearly in the markets here on Earth. In the timelines of what you're looking out there, where do you see the real need for this is going to be occurring down the road in the space market?
Well, in the space market, we see an essential need for the ability to have access to medicine. You know, we've just heard about antimicrobial growth coatings or virus breakouts or anything like that that could happen. As soon as we start scaling up for space settlement or a manned space mission, that's going to be a long endeavor. So the technology to have that availability for medicinal storage would be great. Even more so, this is technology that wherever you go, you can then preserve that. You don't need refrigeration where you end up.
But as far as timelines, are you thinking 5 years, 10 years?
We hope to have this technology ready and out in the market, an initial beachhead market in 5 years. So
but I'm
we
talking
want to
about the market
establish for
demand
that.
in the space industry. Right?
And so in the space industry,
In other words, a colonization on the moon where you might actually need something like this.
right. And so that should be ready and available. If we invest now in this, we see it as ready and available at that time. Within 5 to 10 years.
A related question. Yours was the only business plan write-up that was less than 15 pages out of the 30 you had. And so I did a search for International Space Station, for ISS, for station, all those combinations, hoping you would mention at least that you had talked to a space station representative, because if there's any place they're using vaccines or storing vaccines now, it's up there. And I didn't see anything. So did you even talk to anybody about what they're doing on space station with vaccine storage? Are they doing any of that kind of stuff?
No, we haven't. We're incredibly young. We actually just formed the company and we assembled a team a couple of months ago. So this is very new and emerging technology. We have noticed that, my own research has indicated that NASA has developed a space-ready refrigerator for biological samples that fits that temperature mark that's necessary for medicinal biologicals. However, it is, while it has durability, it's only been tested up to about 6,000 hours.
Just a question about the key risk you have remaining from where you are today to getting something FDA approved and out on the market. Are there one or two major hurdles you need to go to? What keeps you up at night in terms of getting a product out the door?
In order to make ourselves attractive for acquisition, no doubt we will be pursuing domestic regulatory approval. However, we think that one great method to reach markets early would be international approval with equivalency studies for preclinical data. So that would involve a small scale followed by a large scale animal study with the correct animal models. And then moving on from that, constructing the clinical equivalent studies for FDA approval, we hope to qualify for a combination product. So we're not a vaccine manufacturer. We're not a medicine or new drug developer. We are co-opting existing technology for a delivery mechanism and storage mechanism.
A couple of questions. The first one is, do you think that the zero-G environment would have any effect on the process that you're using to stabilize these vaccines?
So this is a fairly robust polymer, and it's largely tailorable. And what that means is that it has been FDA approved in other instances, whether it's in drug stabilization in a powder form, or more importantly, joint replacement. What that means is, in regards to your question of microgravity, we don't see any complication for the polymer withstanding a microgravity environment.
And and what about for markets like blood products?
Right, and so for different types of blood products, we are investigating that. We think perhaps one of the quickest, highest impact routes for that cachet effect would be vaccines. Insulin market is also a heavily regulated market as well. That's something that we're pursuing. As for blood products, sometimes the sheer volume can be, vaccines are generally smaller volume for high potency. Sometimes in the blood market, that might be requiring a larger scale up.
And is it scalable?
It is a scalable technology. The question is, when we do our photo release method, we aren't 100% sure that we can do liters at a time, but milliliters definitely.
Thanks.
As I read your write-up, it sounds like this is like maybe the 10th business plan competition you've been in with this basic idea, right? And you won first place in several of those. You got second or third in a few others. Mm-hmm. I gather that was all very recently, in the last few years, maybe.
The last few months, actually.
Yeah, so I don't know, awesome number of business plan competitions, but given that you got first place in several, why aren't certain investors or companies just throwing money at you now? Because this sounds pretty compelling. Why isn't something happening because of all those wins so far?
We're in a fundraising stage right now, and we're also still assembling part of the core team and negotiating the exclusive license with the university, as well as picking the lab space. So those are some of the administrative things that just have to happen first. But in addition, we are beginning to speak with investors here and abroad.
All right then. All right. Next up will be a company called NanoSatisfy. We're doing a little, before we start, we're doing a little bit of hardware transition. It takes a little extra time. Did I click that? Yes, I did. Okay. Yep. Okay.
Enough for you.
Sorry?
You're good.
I'm good. That's the thing? Okay. Well, usually you would fire it up.
You don't. It's just.
Oh, that's right. You have your own thing. Never mind. That's right. But anyway, during this transition, I wanted to take just a moment to welcome someone. He's really turned into kind of a special guest. This young man actually put in an entry to the business plan competition. He didn't make the cut, but it's a very interesting young man because I think he's the first person in the history of this conference who is rather severely hearing impaired. And while we didn't have the real proper facility to, give him the best possible experience, we did try today to reach out, and Valerie over here is one of our volunteers who's taken time out of his amazing schedule to help transcribe the goings-on so our young man can read and get the full effect of the presentations. His name is Eric Shear, and I'd like to welcome him and thank him for coming. So you guys ready to go? Sure.
pretty well. No, the point is I still need the presentation.
There you go.
Perfect.
You're on.
Good morning, everybody. Sorry for the technology delay. My name is Peter Platzer, and I am a high-energy physicist from Austria, trained at CERN, and then went on to Harvard Business School, where I was a Baker Scholar. I built a $500 million trading business on Wall Street and left it to self-fund and start NanoSatisfy because I'm truly passionate about commercial space. You all know already about our Kickstarter campaign, AutoSat, so let's go into who is NanoSatisfy. We are a space-based data platform, and to explain that easier, I'm going to use an analogy of the Apple ecosystem. If you think about the iPhone, it is a hardware platform with a microprocessor and 4 sensors that Apple made freely available, openly available to the global development community to develop their applications and put it on an app store for easy and convenient access. Well, we are exactly the same thing. We are in space. We have our hardware platform, which is a CubeSat standard with a freely programmable microprocessor and 25 sensors. And we augment that with a software interface to the web for convenient and affordable access to that payload. Convenient as in you log onto the web, you are on the satellite platform and can use it and download your data or upload an application, and affordable as in $250 gets you a couple days of uptime on the satellite. Why is this a big deal? When I was at CERN, that Cray computer was our most prized possession. And 20 years of Moore's laws and exponential improvement put it in the hands of 100 million people across the planet carrying a Cray in an iPad. And if you look at the satellite space, we are still stuck in mainframe land. We have large monolithic structures that are non-standard and don't take advantage of exponential growth because they use 20-year-old technology. Not anymore, we say. Our satellites have a lifetime of 1 year, after which they burn up in the atmosphere and get replaced with a new one so that you always have the most modern technology available to you. And that is not all. There's going to be a constellations of dozens of them, and we're going to talk about in a second how we get there. What does NanoSatisfy focus on? We focus on the software platform that gives you access to our payload, and then the integration with the CubeSat bus. The App Store created over 600,000 applications in the 4 years it's been around, and similar, our data platform has a number of identified applications. And we're going to focus on a consumer play that then scales into an enterprise play. On the consumer side, we're going to focus on space-based remote learning. There are 22 million grade 7 to grade 12 year students, and 31% of which have expressed an interest in science, and twice as many parents have said that they are willing to pay for STEM-based education. Our target is 500,000 of those students in a period of 8 years, very similar to the first robotics competition, which last year had over 300,000 applicants. What does our product look like? Think of it as Lego Mindstorm in space. We're going to have a team of 4 people, $250 per student, and we're going to put them through a 6-month curriculum where they innovate and design their space experiment and then run it on a satellite. Given our target of 500,000 students, that's a market of 125 million. How are we going to penetrate that? We're going to focus on space-based and space science-focused umbrella organizations like Audacity, Mavericks, or Hands on Science. And we have seen those partnerships already happening in our AutoSat pilot. And we're going to use a revenue share model to reach them, help us reach our market. Now let's look at a satellite and look at the profitability of one satellite. It costs us about $150K to build, $150K to launch, and $50K in operations cost. And it can serve about 4,000 students, which, given a safety margin of 25%, gives us a revenue target of $750,000 per satellite or $400,000 profit per satellite. And the nice thing is that those satellites last longer in space than we need them for the space-based learning. So we get an extra 2 to 8 months time that we can leverage into the enterprise market. But the first thing we're going to focus on is space-based weather. Hundreds of millions of dollars of damages to the satellite industry every year. And this is how Quebec looked in 1989 when a solar storm wiped out the power grid. NOAA is truly concerned about that, and companies like airlines and power grid operators are desperately trying to get their hand on better space data. But they can't because there is no network currently available. We will provide that. And this is then how the business scales. 3 years cash flow positive, 5-year revenue, 20 million, 8-year revenue, 230 million, with attractive exit options through acquisitions along the way. First, education companies like Kaplan or Apollo Group, later on Google. Who is making this happening for you? This is our dream team. Amongst us, we have 9 universities, 7 languages, and experience on 3 continents. And we have brought the Wall Street pace to space. We started on a napkin 4 months ago, and today we have a satellite bus, fully designed. We have the 3rd iteration from our payloads. And we have closed one of the 1% most successful Kickstarter campaigns ever. And we're already on to our next steps, which is building that web interface, our ground station network, and signing those partnership agreements. And for those activities, we're raising a $1 million angel round. 20 years of Moore's Law has put the Cray computer in the hand of a 10-year-old. Our goal is to have that same 10-year-old control our satellite, innovate, use our space-based data platform, and truly enjoy convenient and affordable access to space. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Can you talk about launch, please?
Yes. One of the major reasons why we choose the CubeSat standard is if you think of the global shipping industry, containers make it happen. If you fit inside a shipping container, you get easy shipping and affordable anywhere in the world. The CubeSat standard fits into a P-pod, which is the container that is certified on over a dozen launch vehicles. So we went through those launch vehicles and looked at what are the launch capacity we have today, and it's about 500 units of those per year of launch capacity because we fit in that container. The largest size is a 3U, so the satellites that we're talking about is 3U satellites at most.
And so when I was reading the business plan, a lot of these pods are secondary payloads.
Yes.
And so sometimes secondary payloads don't actually get launched. And what happens if you're behind schedule in terms of launching these for your customers? I don't know if because they're students initially, they don't care, or will that be a problem?
There is delays in launches all the time, absolutely true. The way we look at it is there is going to be a lot of those launches of those satellites, and we have spare capacity in every one of those satellites. So they have a lifetime of, let's say, 6 to 12 months. So if we have to borrow capacity from a bird that is up already because the next bird is a week late in launch, we can do that. But there are 100 launches already per year. So there are about 2 launches every single week. So we see that there is maybe a potential for some of the growth that we have here now with like a 90% confidence interval estimated if there is something on the launch side. But SpaceX, for example, all the rides to the ISS, there is space in the trunk every single launch. So I don't think that that is going to be a major problem.
Well, first of all, I love what you're doing here. I think it'll be great for
Thank you.
education and just fun to do. My concern and my real question is, after several years of students and other individuals creating their own apps and using the 25 sensors and doing everything, are you concerned you get to a point where sort of everything's been done and you haven't been able to transition to a very large enterprise market like what the geo satellites do? How do you take it to the next level? Do you need to leave LEO? Do you need to have the 1U become a 3U or 24U, or what's next? I guess
We did a bottom-up analysis of advanced Earth observation data markets. So looking at industries like energy, agriculture, military, that have needs for either advanced data or a certain particular type of data that they can't get right now. And that bottom-up analysis gave us a market size of about $25 billion. So honestly, I don't think that I'm going to run out of applications anytime soon. However, this year was already the first interplanetary CubeSat mission. We talked yesterday with someone who is building propulsion for CubeSats. And at the turn of the 20th century, the head of the patent lab in the US said, physics is dead, everything that is relevant has been done so far. The point is, with such a freely, constantly improving technology, I don't think I would have been able to predict when I was at CERN and look at that Cray room and says, in 20 years, I'm going to carry it around in my pocket. And I don't think anyone could have said, 4 years ago, oh, I have a good sense of the 600,000 application that the combined ingenuity of mankind can come up with. So honestly, I don't think I'm going to run out of applications, because I think the global community will find the most creative uses for such a flexible payload that constantly improves. And it's a good problem to have. If I have $1 billion market and I'm looking for growth, you know what? I'm going to call you, and I'd be happy to talk about it.
I agree with Hoyt. The whole concept is pretty appealing to me, being a CubeSat fan and everything. But I looked more into your assumptions about the market to get started in the education side. And
Yep.
there were some things I looked into, like Space Camp, you said it reached 500,000 students. That's correct, but it took 25 years, I found out, by looking into it. And you mentioned that besides what the parents spend on extracurricular activities for kids in the teenage years, you also said that each child on average spends almost $7,000 a year of their own money.
Teenagers, yes.
And I'm kind of going, wow, I didn't know teenagers had some money like that of their own.
I didn't know either.
And then you also, you're shooting for something like in this education market, over $100 million in revenue after
Yep.
you get going. And as a calibration point, all those numbers didn't quite seem to square with what I understand teenagers to be these days. But can you say if you've looked into the biggest markets for that sort of educational spending, say in the U.S.? Is anybody else spending $100 million on anything to do with education like that?
Well, I mean, like the tutor market alone is on a growth to $100 billion by 2017, and that is just tutoring lessons for everything from math to violin. So we spent literally weeks and weeks digging up the best numbers that we can find from professional reports, from analyst companies, from consulting companies that talk about that industry. Now, I'm personally not someone who has spent 25 years in, let's say, the education industry. So I do rely on those reports, and we are more than happy to make all of that material available. And if you can help us get better data, absolutely. Just one thing as a counterbalance, we talked with with a company, it's a school that does NanoRex experiments, which is like a physical box that goes in the ISS. And speaking with that school, their price point is $450 per student, and it's $10,000 for the school. And they, scaling up by 10x from 1 year to the next so far. And they say that their difficulty is not the $450 for the student. It's Werner said if he moves it from $450 to $1,000, he wouldn't lose a single student. The problem is the $10,000 access price to the school, which is why we've taken it out. And we talked that the two accelerators which has made us offer to join their accelerator program, and one of them suggested to have, instead of a $250 fixed fee, have like a $100 fee and a subscription model, similar to like in the late 70s, where I forgot that name, where you got a new experiment shipped to you once a month for like a subscription fee of $40 or something like that. So we are looking at different pricing models. But we feel like, for example, the robots competitions are growing at 10, 20, 30% a year, and the price point there is in the thousands of dollars per the team rather than $250 per student. So happy to give you all the reports, more than happy to learn more about the numbers and talk about how to penetrate it.
All right, thank you very much. All right, next up will be Pine Aerospace. We're going through our transition again very quickly. Jeff Kruken, are you in the room? There he is. Since we're having some time for the transition, I just wanted to say a little something. If you don't know him, Jeff Kruken did an incredible job running the boot camp for the last day and a half. I just wanted to point that out and introduce yourself a little bit, Jeff. He's also my partner at the Exodus Consulting Group. He's also been he's a great teacher, and he's a former executive director of the Space Frontier Foundation. I want to give him as many kudos as I can. Thanks, Jeff, for the great job you did at the boot camp.
Thanks, Phil. Good morning. I am Armin Ellis. I have 14 years of experience in the aerospace industry, a PhD in optical instrumentation, and I had a previous company doing aerospace components, which was acquired in 2007. I'm very excited to tell you about my next venture, which is Pine Aerospace, where we detect and monitor oil spills and offer a service that's badly needed for the industry at higher quality and at lower prices. Now, we all remember the Deepwater Horizon tragedy in 2010. Some 4.9 million barrels of oil were released in a matter of 85 days. What's tragic here is that this cost is really associated with the damage that was caused to the Louisiana coastline. Now, BP has put a fund forward for about $20 billion to remedy that, and that cost could potentially go up to about $100 billion. Now, if there was only better data on the oil spill, and if we had more situational awareness of what was going on, the right tools could have been used at the right time, and that coastline could have been better protected, and a lot of the costs could have been reduced. What's also interesting here is that statistics from 2010 and 11 show that there have been 24 major oil spills. That's one a month on average, which is quite surprising, actually. You know, in the aftermath of Deepwater Horizon, industry understood that there was a problem with public perception, and they decided that they were going to get together and create research funds to look at this problem a little further. Governments also, having taken the cost for this monitoring activity, were also in agreement that there has to be some new way for active monitoring. At Pine Aerospace, we have come up with a solution that has three components to it. The first is instrumentation. Now, this instrument is very good at looking at water and distinguishing it from oil. We don't do mapping. This is the domain of conventional Earth observation satellites. That's not what we're competing against. So, for example, if you look at the image on the left, this is what you would get with optical instruments from traditional Earth observation satellites. And our solution in Pine Aerospace is to provide what's shown on the right. Fundamentally, what's on the right is not derived from what's on the left. Okay, so this is new technology. And also there's additional things that we can do in the agricultural field as well. The second part of our solution is an interesting way that we deploy our system. Although the components, many of our colleagues have done a fantastic job of creating subsystems. We're not in the subsystems development business. We'll just purchase those. But also what's important is the data handling system. What we do is that we process this data and do so at a very innovative manner and supply it to smart devices where individuals on the field can use where they need it. So as many users who need to be aware of the situation in the field, that's a very important thing to take home. Our system is protected by patent, and takeaway message here is that it's scalable for Pine Aerospace. Servicing 5 rigs anywhere in the world costs the same amount as servicing 500 rigs. Very analogous to GPS and navigation systems. Also worth remembering here is that we lower the cost to industry. Right now,
instrumentation costs could be over $100,000 per rig, and we can reduce that substantially through a traditional subscription system. Now, our implementation strategy can best be described as a test-as-you-design strategy. And we have a UAV program where we test the algorithm and work with our instrument to make sure that the space segment is developed in parallel with our UAV program. And furthermore, we have a beta program where we bring in our clients. Currently, we're working with 2 of the top 10 oil industry partners. And we believe that the beta program will allow us to better understand what they need, and furthermore, turn those beta customers into paying customers later on. Just to mention the team, you guys have the resumes. I think we've got the technical side very well covered. We also have tremendous experience in finance and marketing. A little bit about the market size. Right now, we're looking at 400 deep sea rigs that are out there, and this number is due to go up by 12% per year as we drill into deeper and deeper and less accessible oceans. What we'd like to do is to capture about 30% of the market, and we're confident, having spoken to our early customers, that we can meet our second-year revenues of $3 million. A little bit about the risk mitigation here, because this data is also useful for governments and environmental groups and has lots of agricultural applications such as water management. And our exit strategy is very standard and expected within 3 to 5 years. Thank you. I'm willing to take questions now.
So I'm wrestling a little bit with the value proposition here with your customer. If we remember the BP oil spill, there were cameras that were providing image under the water.
That's right.
And they weren't very happy about having them there and having the information available because of the liabilities associated with it. So I'm kind of want to probe a little bit deeper here about the value proposition, particularly for the folks whose rigs that you're going to be looking at,
yes.
And kind of the risk issues. I mean, even if you're selling to government organizations and getting them to the pay, they have very strong lobbying groups, which ultimately are going to influence the ability to pay for these kinds of things.
Absolutely.
Have you looked at the risks around that? Because if I'm running a major oil company and I've got a major oil leak out there, I'm not sure how happy I am about all the information. I mean, I think ethically it's a great thing, but I worry about that. So maybe address that a little bit.
I think that's actually a very interesting point to raise. I think Deepwater Horizon changed everything. I think it opened up the understanding that the public had about the oil industry. And frankly, with BP having to shell out $20 billion, and as I say, it could go up to $100 billion, I think that the game has changed now. There's more awareness than there was previously, and they're actively doing things. I mean, I fundamentally don't think they're bad guys. I think that I think you need to give them the right tools to do the right things.
Have you considered, going the route of a hosted payload on someone else's constellation as opposed to putting up your own? I mean, skybox imaging, for instance, maybe too late for Orbcomm or Internet or Iridium, but do you really need to have your own dedicated constellation and all the headaches that involves?
Well, that is an interesting point. Yes, we have looked into it. It's an alternative method for deployments. Okay. In 6 minutes, there's only so much that you can discuss, obviously, but that is a very interesting architecture, and certainly I think that once we go through the UAV test, as we design the instrument, we have to look at the compatibility of it. But certainly I think that is a good option to go forward with, yes.
I can see and you didn't talk much about the agricultural monitoring, but I can definitely see markets in both of these areas. I guess my biggest question is that part of this whole business plan is about space enabling. So you're using space for terrestrial applications,
yes.
But does it do anything to enable future space development as well?
Okay. Again, I think that that's one of those key things. As many of you know, I am space through and through. One of the things that I believe is that we need applications So you can build a bridge, but if it goes to nowhere, there's no point in having it. But if you do have lots and lots of applications, the people who are developing the subsystems will buy them. We don't want to get in that business. There's people who are creating rides, we'll take them. And the infrastructure, I think, really is what we'll be supporting and making this really relevant for day-to-day applications as well.
I have a related question about the scale-up of this service.
Okay.
On the one hand, you said that small sensor that was in the photo, you said you need 6 of those on a CubeSat or a
That's right.
platform to do the data set you really want to get.
That's right.
And that seemed pretty big to put 6 of those on even a 3U CubeSat. So that's my first question. The other one was to really provide the value proposition of timely data return for these rigs, like on a daily basis at least.
Yes.
You need more than 5 satellites. You probably need dozens or something to get that timeliness. So
Okay.
do you have in your mind, do you have a clear path to shrink this sensor down so you can get 6 on a satellite and then get something like a few dozen of those satellites up for a reasonable price and still offer that service for a reasonable price?
Yes, okay, so the first question about the sensors, absolutely, yes, we do need 6. And really, we've proven how it works. It's just a case of packaging. I don't see any technical development risks on that front.
And you're, I'm a little curious about your link budget here, because you're doing this in LEO, but you're providing imaging, right?
Yes.
And those things move pretty quick. So kind of ground station cost and support, I mean, do you see any issues there? Because
Okay.
you're moving a lot of imaging information over very low bandwidth links.
Excellent point. So there is a fundamental change to the way that this data processing is handled. Okay. One of the things that I'd mentioned in the actual document is our particular approach that is actually patented. This is a very different way of looking at how you manage that data flow. So, as a space architect, that's obviously one of those key requirements to look at. And I'd be happy to talk to you about the
That was
details.
the on-orbit processing that you were trying to do?
A huge amount of it, so that you're actually dealing with data rather than raw images. Yeah.
If we're good, then I guess we're good.
Okay. Thank you.
We are going to take a short networking break now. It's that time in the program, so please join us again at 11 o'clock on the nose. We will start again with the next 5. Davidson is the founder and managing partner of Near Earth LLC. Previously, he was the managing director at Telecom Group at the Credit Suisse First Boston. His investment banking career began in 1987 as an associate and one of only approximately 100 bankers at Donaldson, Lufkin, and Ginrette. He was part of the phenomenal growth and success of DLJ to over 1,000 bankers by the time of his acquisition by CSFB in 2000. At DLJ, Mr. Davidson was a co-founder of the firm's Space Finance Group, Wall Street's first dedicated industry coverage group for the satellite industry. Mr. Davidson was one of 2 managing directors at the Space Finance Group. This group raised over $25 billion for satellite-related entities and held a #1 market share for several years. Prior to investment banking, Hoyt Davidson was a senior research engineer in the Space Systems Division of Lockheed Missiles and Space Company before leaving to get his MBA at MIT Sloan School. Please welcome Hoyt Davidson. To his left is Rex Ridenour. Rex is founder and CEO of, I believe that's pronounced IZUP LLC, a NewSpace consultancy operating at the intersection of space technology, commercial space development, and investor communities. He's also an active board member at Ecliptic Enterprises Corporation, which is the home of the Rocket Cam that many of us know about, a firm he founded in 2001 and led as CEO and president through the spring of this year. Rex is a space mission engineer by education and experience, an entrepreneur by nature. Before Ecliptic, he was chief mission architect at Space Dev and Blastoff Corporation, focused on defining commercial lunar, Mars, and near-Earth asteroid missions. In 1998, at Microcosm, he played a catalytic role in the successful salvage of the commercial communications satellite AsiaSat-3 via a novel lunar swing-by trajectory, and still the only commercial spacecraft to have ever traveled to the vicinity of the moon. For The first 20 years of his career at Hughes, Lockheed, Utah State University, and JPL, Rex held technical and product leadership positions on 20 pathfinding space missions and projects as a spacecraft systems engineer, test conductor, mission engineer, mission planner, mission architect, project engineer, and study leader. Rex earned his MS in aeronautics from Caltech and BS in aerospace engineering, cum laude, from Iowa State. Please welcome Rex Ridenour. To his left, Thomas Atchison is the founder and chairman of the Maverick Civilian Space Foundation, a 501c3 California nonprofit he started in 2007, focused on enabling the personalization of access to space by the common man through STEM education, research, and competitive competitions. With over 25 years' experience as an entrepreneur and technologist in Silicon Valley, he has pioneered new technology and ventures in the semiconductor, mobile computing, enterprise software, medical device, healthcare information tech, security, aerospace, and defense industries. He successfully started 4 tech ventures, raising over $30 million in angel, corporate, and VC commitments. While VP of Engineering and GM at Navitel Communications, he was responsible for architecting the development of their Windows-based web screen phone and smartphone platforms, which was acquired by Microsoft in 1999 and became the core of today's Windows Mobile technology. He received an undergraduate degree in chemical engineering, a second degree in radiochemistry and nuclear physics, and completed graduate studies in engineering management. His current interests include space vehicle development, commercialization and civilian space exploration, STEM education, synthetic and systems biology, and next-generation manufacturing tech. Please welcome Thomas Atchison. And it just occurred to me, I'm looking down at that table and it seems there's someone missing. And so we're going to have to go hunt him down, I guess, very, very quickly. But for the record, our 5th judge, who shall be here momentarily, I'm sure, is Jay Buckner Hightower, the co-founder, executive vice president of Excalibur Almaz. He has more than 25 years executive management experience in multiple industries and a 30-year background of investment, entrepreneurism, and capital formation. His top-level teaming with Art Dula began in the 1980s, including as vice president and chief financial officer of Space Commerce Corporation, which formed the first historic Soviet-American joint venture in aerospace. Mr. Hightower is partnering with Dula. And how does this stack up to other competitive solutions, should there be any? And of course, how do they mitigate risk? What do their financials look like, the solidity of their pro formas and their operating history? And of course, overall, just kind of the gut feel you might have about the business, what you thought a Silicon Valley guy might think of this business, or an institutional investor, or even Main Street. And of course, the most important thing, its applicability to space. Is this a frontier-enabling technology or service that will help add another piece to that huge puzzle that we're putting together to make humanity a permanent spacefaring civilization? And those were the decisions that we had to go through. And here are our finalists, and they will be coming up shortly. We'll have the rules here in a second, but before I do that, I want to introduce our judges. We've got an amazing crew this year. We're very, very fortunate to have them. First of all, meet Eva Jane Lark. She's a vice president and wealth advisor with BMO Nesbitt Burns, one of Canada's largest full-service investment firms. For over 20 years, she's provided expert advice on a wide variety of investment and wealth management issues. In 2003, she revived her childhood passion for seeing humanity live and thrive beyond Earth. Researching the state of the space industry, she began to consider how to contribute to such a future by taking a more active role. She's presented papers at space conferences, starting with the investment financing of exploration. She's been an invited speaker, panelist, and judge. She's been a previous judge of this competition in 2009. And she discusses topics including financing for new space companies and markets, business accelerators, business case issues facing space resources, both space-based solar power as a future energy source, and in situ resource utilization in space mining, and for her insights as a keen observer of the emerging new space industries. Please welcome Eva Jane Lark. To her left is a judge who has actually served us last year as well, and he's back for a return bout, which I think is amazing. Hoyt is an intimate community, especially this conference. Everybody kind of knows everybody or gets to know them over a period of time. So, of course, the challenge is to make a really fair and impartial analysis of everyone's submission to make sure everybody gets a fair shake on a level playing field. We got lucky this year in that we recruited a great group of people to assist with the screening process. People who are kind of at the edges of this conference, but they can do a fair and impartial analysis. And so some of the in-house screeners at the foundation, if we felt uncomfortable, we would recuse ourselves, we'd put that in a pile and give it to these guys, and they could do that analysis for us. And then we had a big shakedown session at the end, which took hours and days and lots of phone time. That group is called NewSpace Global. I don't know if they're represented here today. I know Frank Mycroft has been here, and Richard David. Either of you here? Well, big thank you to those guys. They did a lot of great work. Now, how did we screen the applicants? We had a new partner this year in the form of an outfit called Decision Desk, and they have a lot of great online collaborative tools for screening applicants and for taking it to the next step. And we set up pages for everybody, and all the screeners got to be able to just go online, share their information, and then rank the applicants on a number of very important parameters. One, did the executive summary give all the required information? Wow, what was the depth of the management team and their backgrounds, their industry experience? The scale of that experience was very speculative to very proven. Their competitive positioning, was that defined well? Where do they stand against their competition? What's their unfair advantage, as we like to call it? If they don't claim they have a lot of competition, well, then how is their service sought after? Who's going for it and why? The technology, if technology is involved, it's not a service, it's a technology. Well, does it work as they describe?
I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Thomas Andrew Olson, our business plan manager, who is a founding partner of the Exodus firm with over 3 decades of experience in connecting startups with investment groups. So, Tom?
Thank you. There's your work, and then there's your life's work. The kind of work that has your fingerprints all over it, the kind of work that embeds itself into your DNA, the kind of work you never compromise on, the kind of work you sacrifice weekends for. We do that kind of work here. People don't come to this conference to play it safe. We come here to swim in the deep water because we want our work to add up to something big, something that couldn't happen anywhere else. Welcome to the Space Frontier Foundation, welcome to this year's NewSpace Conference, and welcome to the 2012 Business Plan Competition. Big change from last year, thanks to our friends at NASA Ames, who gave us a very generous grant. Our first prize this year has been bumped up to $100,000. And you can start a company with that. And second prize is $10,000. We have 10 finalists this year, and it was an amazing process getting them here. Here's just a comparison. Last year, we had very short notice to get this thing done. We only had 25 executive summary submissions, and we had 5 finalists. This year, we got the word out in multiple avenues, 55 submissions that we had to narrow down to 10 finalists. This was not easy. And the reason it was not easy is that we are still, in the first place, a rather small community.